Okay. All right. Hi, Tara. How are you?
Good. How are you? How's
I'm
your week been? How's your month been?
good. Oh, I can't believe it's February already. Yeah, it's been pretty good. I mean, January has been pretty much just about getting back to things. I was actually quite busy with my home visit clients in January, which was lovely. And then yeah, just doing my massage clinics at your studio. Feels strange you're sitting in the little snug room and I'm sitting at home.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so what about you?
January
What's
felt
been
really long. It's not usually a month that bothers me particularly because I'm not waiting for the big payday, at the end of the month. When you're self-employed, you just don't have that. But I am finding the weather, that kind of damp cold, is really, really affecting everybody. So the ladies have been enjoying coming into yoga and getting that kind of nice, snuggly relaxation at the end. I think everybody needs that. Just a little nervous system reset. Um, Kind of like an extra little bit of self-care whenever the weather's just kind of the way it is. We're all ready
definitely?
for spring, so happy days, it's February.
I think so. And I think sometimes you really forget that you're still, I mean, you're in the middle of winter, new
Yeah.
year, maybe, but like definitely not ready to be like out of the starting, like start your year running. Absolutely not. I've been taking it easy quite a bit. January. I mean, my birthday's in January as well. So like I've been, aside from looking after my lovely clients and doing a little bit of writing and all of that, I've just been really taking it easy. And the writing can happen under my new blankie.
Just make it. Well, you know me, I'm not someone who's ever cold, but for once I'm actually starting to feel the cold.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm approaching yoga classes slightly differently at the minute, acknowledging the cold and um just that kind of busyness of jumping straight back into January. And yeah, so yoga classes have been really busy. They've been great. It's lovely to see all the familiar faces and then the lovely new clients, usually coming in through pregnancy. And it's such a wide span of gestation. So we have women who are coming right from kind of 12 weeks. Some come a little bit earlier because they understand the benefits of kind of slowing down and just starting to accept their ever-changing pregnant body, which is so lovely. And then we have women who are in yoga right up until baby is born, which is
Mhm.
fantastic. Um, I was on call there for a good wee bit of January, and then I've had a bit of a break, and I'm back on call again for a lovely little family. So that will be nice. And then I'm slowing off a little bit with the doula work because things are busy with the kids. January's fairly quiet in their sporting schedule, but it will
Mhm.
start to ramp up from February. So I've
Sure.
got my mum hat firmly on, and yeah, just going to immerse myself in yoga and reflexology and all that lovely stuff during the week, and then have time with the kids at the weekend. That is
Mhm.
the plan.
That is the plan. I know what's been coming up in your classes. I mean, in my clinic, I would say probably about more than half of the women who come through actually would like a birth that is free from intervention. So sometimes at home, maybe sometimes in the water. Um, and I mean, you and I both know that in the end, it doesn't tend to always work out that way. When you hear, clients towards the end of their pregnancies talk about what's coming up for them in their appointments and all of that. Sometimes that's the time when people need to pivot quite a bit. And, I hear it in my clinic, but I also know it from working as a midwife for all those years. But what's been coming up for you as a doula and as in your classes?
Yes, most women would come in and absolutely be wanting kind of a birth. Well, they would talk about wanting a physiological birth, but I think we've moved away so much from what that actually looks like. But yes, they would talk about wanting a natural birth with no intervention, which obviously doesn't always mean a physiological birth.
Mm.
Um, And yeah, lots of mums planning home births, and I would be seeing that a lot of those seem to be getting cancelled,
Mm,
which is really unfortunate.
mhm,
It's a big shift away from birthing your baby at home with all of the benefits that we know to be true,
mm,
to then step inside a hospital setting to birth your baby. So yeah, seeing a lot of home births getting cancelled. And mostly it's coming down to um, the hospital saying that babies are too big and this is risky. Um, yeah,
mhm.
but also something that's coming through a lot at the moment, and has been a reason for a couple of the home births changing, is women being low on iron.
Oh yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay. Interesting. And would the women then, kind of take matters into their own hands in terms of iron and things like that? Do they have a good look around about what they could do themselves, or are they talking about getting transfused or infused
Um,
iron infusions, I mean?
no, most of them will be prescribed iron
Mm,
by the GP, but then, no real guidance as to how to
mm,
take it, or,
mm,
taking it with vitamin C to help the absorption, and just being really mindful of their diet, because the iron can constipate them, which is then going to lead to a whole other set
mhm,
of kind of issues and complications. But a lot of them, yeah, get the iron tablets, and maybe don't look into other ways of helping that until maybe the iron tablets don't agree with them or cause other
mm,
problems.
mhm. Yeah. I think that's something, like whenever we're talking about inviting people along to their birth preparation early on, like no matter, like you have a few clients in your yoga classes themselves that, people who are like really starting before they're even 12 weeks. And then we certainly love to see it as well in Born Through Yoga, because it's those wee things that can derail you at the end. You might be like planning your home birth, and you, it could just catch you unawares, and part of it has to do, because I mean, if your hemoglobin is low, your red cells are low, there has been something going on in the body. Some of that is a physiological response, of course, to pregnancy, because you have the hemodilution going on, and you have, your red cells will dilute more in the extra fluid, and, there's all that kind of stuff that's going on. And there's a physiological drop in the middle of pregnancy, around about 29 or so weeks. Sure, but then also there could just be a drop that's too much, not a healthy drop, and maybe reflecting some of the habits that you might have been having in your pregnancy, where you have never in your life had to consider whether or not you take iron-rich foods and whether your cells are renewing properly or not. But now you're pregnant, and then those little things that are maybe an issue might flag up. And that's why it's really important to start thinking about it early on, because when you get caught at the very end and you're like 38 weeks and somebody takes your blood and your your hemoglobin is low, to the point, well, below guideline, and then you can have a bit of an opinion on what around those guidelines and the holistic view of all of that. But if you're truly depleted of nutrition and stuff that helps you make red cells, then it's probably plausible enough to try and be preemptive and not want to sit at home, with a heavy blood loss. So being proactive early on, that's really something we always talk about, isn't it?
Well, I think, for me back 12 years ago, it'll be this year that I started um, teaching pregnancy yoga.
Mm,
And it was very much at that kind of time that you maybe would join pregnancy yoga after your 12-week scan.
mhm,
But over the years, it's shifted away from that, because there was so many benefits to start to get on board with your breathing, with your movement, and also being around other like-minded women. So when I worked with Yoga Bellies, we started to welcome women as soon as they wanted to come, because pregnancy yoga is very gentle. It's gentle for the mind, it's gentle for the body, it's nurturing for the nervous system. And we find that actually, yeah, a lot of women did want to come before the 12-week scan. They just kind of thought it was
mm,
a written rule. And that very much tallies into what we talk about in Born Through Yoga. It just, we've got to start thinking about birth, like at the start of our pregnancy, because we talk about obviously that continuum, and
Mm,
early pregnancy will start to affect late pregnancy, birth, and then into your postnatal days. But
mm,
I think that's why for you and I it was very important when we did our birth education model to start um, making women aware of even how that very first appointment, those very first conversations that they have about their pregnancy will pave the pathway. Will
mhm,
start to pave the pathway. And once the pathway is on that trajectory, it can
mm,
be changed, but it sometimes
mm.
takes the heart of a lion to do that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think when you're just talking about that first appointment there, I always say that you mightn't even notice that you've already potentially flagged up risk factors, so-called, um, by saying, like, hello, my name is, and this is my date of birth. Right there, you've given an information that could potentially put you into a pathway that is not going to make it so easy for you to choose birth at home at the end of your
Yeah.
pregnancy, potentially. But then also, you're stepping on the scales, you're getting your height taken. So, right there, we've got then the calculation of your BMI. And if you're not really vigilant about that, it might go entirely past you, and you might want a home birth, for instance, but you might not know that per guideline, you're actually not within the remit of, birth at home. And so right there, nobody has even taken any blood from you. They haven't even done
Mhm.
anything in terms of scanning, or, if you're wanting scans throughout your pregnancy. Um, so a lot of the time you may not be aware, and that's again why it's so nice to be among, well, like-minded people in a group. And then we have our WhatsApp groups as well, where somebody who knows a bit, and you might say, well, I want a water birth, and somebody might think, oh, well, something might have already flagged up for you, that you may be advised against it, and you may want to advocate for yourself. Um, and when we talk about that, obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean that you just ignore everything that's being said to you, and because it's, because there's validity in all the things that are being observed, and whether or not they're evidence based, but it's just happening to you. So you got to engage with it in some way. So even if it's not evidence based to say to you, you can't have X, Y, or Z because of whatever, your age, your BMI, or whatever, it may not be based on good evidence, but it's happening to you anyway. So you've got to engage with it. And it's nice to do that with some people who know a bit about it, and a group of other people who are like minded.
Well, this is it. And I think, obviously everyone in my role as a doula, it's just to provide information that my clients want and
Yeah.
ask for. And I will support women in whatever birth that they hoped or want to have. But I want them all to be the voice in the room. And as you say, like there's lots of things that crop up that have validity and are worthwhile listening to. But I think if things just crop up at that very last kind of stages, 38, 39 weeks, what you'll see is women getting so overwhelmed because it's like, I never, and it can just be hard to comprehend. And, they feel like things are too late to put in place, but it's never too late. Never,
No.
ever too late.
Yeah. It's just overwhelming when it comes at the end, and
Yeah.
it's, and you have to like roll it back. And there's
Yeah.
so much information now, where you may also hear something comes with a slightly higher, risk, but you might still want to choose it. So how do you advocate for yourself if that's the case? And how can you keep ahead, and how can you not totally get too scared? Because you're going to be confronted with some opposition and things like that. So it is really hard. But yes, absolutely. If, like, the woman has to be the voice in the room, and it could be that you're advocating for your elective cesarean section, uh, when the protocol says that you don't fall within the category of woman who would be advised to have an elective cesarean section, if you're low risk but you want to have um, a cesarean section, or universal care pathway. We don't use risk language anymore, apparently. So it's the universal care pathway as per the NICE guidelines. So yes, it becomes quite complex because at the end of the day, all you want to be is pregnant and then have a baby.
Yeah.
You know.
But it's not just that, as we say, pregnant, have a baby, postnatal, and they all come so quickly together. They're not isolated. It's the rest of your life. You know that yourself. Like, and even for me as a parent, there's times where I think I wish I could stop and rewind a little bit, but you can't. Things just go fast forward at the pace of light. And yeah, before you know it, you're like me and have kids who are barely at home, and then you're missing their company. And it just, it's just this whirlwind of emotions. One minute you were like so overwhelmed because they were around your feet, like, and we're touching you all the time. And then the next minute you're like, I actually feel a little bit lonely.
Yes, I know that it does come that way. But yeah, I mean, so I think if you are currently pregnant and you know you're at the early stages of pregnancy and you're starting to think about birth education, do start, because
Yeah.
there's a lot to take in, and it's to take it in, just take it in. It's just information. It doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't even have to be that you're set on one idea. In fact, I would say don't be. It's just get all the information
Yeah.
and start
Open
to
up the
identify what you
conversations.
want and how to
Yeah.
get there.
That's what I say to clients all the time. And I think it's why in pregnancy yoga, the conversations that we have at the start of every class
Mm,
become such a big part of the class because women are opening conversations and things are talked about that they maybe would never have come into their minds, um and opening conversations amongst other women, like sometimes that maybe isn't beneficial because sometimes people like to talk about the risky stuff as opposed to the wonderful side of birthing. And but opening conversations with health professionals, I'm such an advocate of women speaking to the consultant midwives. We have some
mm,
fantastic consultant midwives in
mhm,
Northern Ireland, and they are such a good intermediary between some of the things that are being said to you that you find overwhelming and then your own thoughts and kind of coming together. So yeah, I think they're a really good ally to have as you
mm.
head towards your birth, if things aren't kind of on the trajectory that you're hoping for.
Yeah. Yeah, I just heard there's one of my clients who did our online born through yoga had a baby last week. So I was meant to do a home visit last Tuesday, so it must have been sometime before Tuesday that she had her baby. And I mean, she ended up having a lovely water birth, and she had advocated for herself a little bit in the lead up, because she was going to fall out of the remit for a midwife-led environment. And um, we were able to give some, guidance through the program, but then she could kind of ask her questions as well. And she had it all laid out. She at her last appointment, she made sure that everything was documented. She made sure that she asked the right questions, around the factors that would have prevented her from going to the midwife-led environment. Um, and then she said, to the doctor, will you document all of this? And it meant that whenever she was in labor, it was just easy as, opening her chart and for her to be able to say, look, this has been, and then she ended up having a lovely water birth, which is just so lovely to hear, because she is somebody who really took the information to heart and paved the road by organizing some of the organizational stuff that she needed to have in place so that she could just go through. Because that's the other thing. You don't want to be in labor and then that's when the curveballs come. I mean, that's the last,
Yeah,
that's the
you don't
last
want to
thing.
just start the conversations.
No,
You
no,
they're not going to get the oxytocin flowing.
absolutely not.
Um,
So
but yeah, I think, when obviously when we set up our Born Through Yoga, that was a part of what we wanted to educate women on. And that's why we set up our app the way we did.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
that and they can get all the different, things that come up at your 12-week appointment, things that might come up at your 20-week appointment, just so that you know. And not even from a point of view of expecting that something won't be positive at that appointment, but women will actually don't know what to expect. Like, will I get a scan? Do I get my bloods taken? Am I weighed? Am I,
Yeah.
you should know. You should know what you're going up for, um, and also just knowing can just helps the excitement as well. I
Mhm.
looked forward to going for appointments, but I always ask, like, what do I expect in this appointment? And if it was the ones that said, "Oh, you'll get your blood taken," I was like, right, I get to
Yeah.
practice my breathing. Yeah, because
Yes.
everyone thinks that's funny when I say I'm really scared of needles. And
It's yeah.
you're covered in tattoos and you go to birth. I was like, it's all completely different. But it is also all in my head. So when I get on board with the breathing, it's okay. But if it just takes me by surprise, I'd get really overwhelmed. My blood pressure would go through the roof. People start saying, your blood pressure. Yes, I know the story. So I think right across your life as a woman, just kind of being prepared, having all the tools is a good thing.
Yeah. And the breathing, yeah, it's not just for birth, it's for life.
Yeah.
I use it all the
Um,
time.
yeah. I
Yeah.
always say, like, it's just the pillar of calm. It's the breath is the pillar of
Yeah.
calm. And, again, what we talk about in Born Through Yoga is that, and why it's called Born Through Yoga is because yoga is taking all of its, or hypnobirthing takes all of its roots from yoga. And
Mhm.
sometimes women will say, oh, I didn't use my hypnobirthing. And I'm like, but you told me your breathing techniques were amazing. And they're like, yeah, yeah, but didn't really have time to practice the other things. And I was like, but your breathing techniques are the foundation of your hypnobirthing. And
Absolutely.
I think the way we teach the course, definitely practice all of the things, but you're going to know what you like better or what suits you better. And you take what you want and you take what you need from things in life and use them and adapt them to you. But if you don't know the stuff, then you can't use it.
And
uh,
also, I think just being realistic about what's on offer to you, because women are always in my clinic, the sort of one-to-one massage sessions when I have a moment with somebody who's coming for one of the longer sessions, and you kind of say, somebody says to you, well, I want the physiological birth. A lot of women actually say straight out they want a water birth. Yeah.
yeah.
And then you say, do you know that that's the least likely way of giving birth, in Northern Ireland? Even knowing that, probably the whole of the UK, but the only data that I was able to find recently with that Freedom of Information Act data that's out there is that depending on what trust you're going to, it's somewhere between like 70 and 1,000, so 0.7%, yeah, your chances of having the water birth, and 2 in 100, you know, depending on the trust. And I think once you put it out like that, that's if you just float along. That's if you just float in there and you think, "Oh, I'll just have my water birth. That's what I want. I want a water birth." And the misunderstanding often is that you just have to tick the box and you choose your birth and then you go in. But that's not how it works. And sometimes it's a really good idea not to go in the water. Of course it is. But then a lot of these times, it's definitely a good idea to go into the water to have your baby more often than 70 times in 1,000. I can tell you that. Like that's,
Yeah.
we know it's a very effective form of pain relief. It's a very effective it makes your spontaneous birth more likely. There's all kinds of, but then even knowing that means that, okay, so what are normally the hurdles and this kind of stuff. So that's all part of the course too. And that is why we have put into our online part all the things of this is what's happening at your appointments. There is your blood pressure being taken. This is why. There is your baby, your measuring tape, and you mentioned some of the home births that you were aware of, planned, have been cancelled because of a big baby. Now
Yeah.
there's a bigger story to that. So the midwife comes with her measuring tape, what's attached to that to that action of just measuring your bump seems pretty benign. But before you know it, you might be told you have a big baby. And then when the baby's actually born, you might find that that baby isn't all that big after all. And so it's those different things of like
And all that comes in
walking that
between that,
gray area.
you've got the tape measure and then you need the scan and then you need the
Mhm.
follow-up scan. And, babies don't actually like those scans, but that's another story.
Yes, that's a story for another day.
And but what does that do to you? Like constantly going up, sitting in the at the at the environment,
Yeah,
sitting in the car in those traffic jams, trying to get your car parked, going and sitting in the hospital, waiting for your appointment, worried or anxious about that, and it's never just a little scan. It
no,
never is.
no.
But back to what you said about the number of births, that's why it's sad, that
Mhm.
home births are being cancelled because ultimately the only reason you don't get into a pool in your home birth if you've got a birth pool is because either it's because you don't want to. Whereas if you're thinking of a water birth and you're stepping inside to the hospital, you know, your chances are, even from the fact that there's very little pools in the hospitals now,
Yeah.
um, in the Royal there's two, in
Mhm.
the Ulster, well, that's probably your best chance in Northern
That's probably
Ireland.
best chance.
You
You
give 10.
still have to qualify to get
Yeah.
in. Yeah. And so
Um,
it's, yeah, you're right. And I mean, two pools in the Royal that are not always busy when we have more than 6,000 babies born there every year. That's, of course, they're not always busy because
yeah.
we only have the two in 100 women statistically, according to the Freedom of Information Act in 2024, in the Belfast Trust going into the water. So it's an
Well, the
interest.
last couple of births I've been at that have been at the Royal, it's been lovely that my clients have got to use the pill. And that's fantastic. And as soon as they get into it, you just see the shoulders drop, the breath deepen, and that in itself can make such a difference. But I do know in years gone by, and again, probably what will happen more and more, there's less staff that's pulled away from the units, and if the pill has been used, it maybe hasn't had a chance to be cleaned.
Mhm.
So it's not available. So yeah, it's
And I mean, to be honest, there are probably more women getting to labor in the water and then things change. Do you know?
yeah.
And you come out of the water because of things that have evolved, but at least it's been made available. So I would say that probably, um, because these statistics are going to reflect the babies who are actually born in the water. So there'd be lots of women who've been in the water until you could see a baby, or they might have wanted to come out themselves. And so it's not all doom and gloom. And I do think, actually, like statistically, they're actually seem to be doing, you know, very well compared to the rest, but it still means that overall in Northern Ireland, it's slim chances to actually get to stay in the water and give birth in there. And the other commonality with the clients that you go in is that they both, or like if you've had a few clients recently over the last year who all got in the water, well, they all had you with them too, meaning that they've probably been thinking about how they can make it more possible to that, more likely for them to get to use the pool. That means,
I think
like a doula
again,
is gonna change your,
the
yeah.
role of the doula is to kind of nourish, educate, and support, and our education is done before baby comes. It's
Exactly. And that
just
doesn't, yeah, yeah.
opening up conversations or encouraging conversations or looking at options and
Mhm,
looking at guidelines. It's
mhm,
mad in Northern Ireland that you could, I would say to clients, well, what is it that you're hoping for your birth? Have a look at the guidelines and policies of these hospitals that are so close together because actually their policies and guidelines can be completely different.
mhm.
So even things down to that. But you know,
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
water births, yeah, still seem to be high in the hopes of most women. But yeah,
lots of obstacles.
lots of obstacles.
Hmm. So yeah, so if you are pregnant and you'd like not to do this all by yourself and find all the information by yourself, then our course, Born Through Yoga, is amazing. We've heard that feedback quite a bit, and even the app, because it's in your phone, you have that in your pocket if you need to take it to the appointment with you, but also just to yeah, prepare, read the stuff ahead of time, have somebody who might be able to say, well, this could become an issue for you. These are the questions that you might want to be asking. Even that, you know, even if you're, I mean, a lot of the couples who come to us won't actually then necessarily have a birth doula with them,
Oh yeah.
and they're still able to advocate for themselves more. And so if that's something that you're keen on doing, we run these as workshops a few times a year, and then we've got online only options too. So it's a great option.
And we
um
dive into all types of birth, what birth might look like if you choose to opt in for induction, if you're planning for a cesarean birth. Something that I'm really passionate about is talking about cesarean birth and what to expect and how to recover if that is the choice that you want to have. And also then obviously talking about physiological birth, vaginal birth, pain relief. But the big thing about using your body, moving and bringing comfort through different kind of hypnobirthing techniques, breathing, movement, massage, aromatherapy, all of those things that maybe people don't understand the potency of all of these things, but together, and how you can use all of these things, whatever birth that you hope to have.
that's the other thing. That's one thing that is really also um very important to us both, I think, is that there's no dogma in there. It's like whatever you do, if you want to have an induction of labor, you go ahead, you lean into it, you know what to expect, you know what the downsides of it might be and what the advantages might be, and you prepare, and then you go in excited, even if you are having an induction of labor. There's nothing that that we're advocating against. All we do is give information. And then aren't you planning a cesarean section Born
Workshop?
Through Yoga class? Yes.
Yes, I'm going
Mhm.
to be doing in March a 2 hour online kind of session about what to expect if you're planning a cesarean birth, how you can put things in place for your recovery, yeah, and then just opening up for questions and conversation about it as a doula, as someone who teaches pregnancy yoga and has lots of women who choose to have cesareans, but also as a mum who choose to have cesarean birth. Yeah, so yeah, that'll be in March, and the details are all on our.
Our face-to-face classes. There's one next week on next Sunday, which is going to be the 8th of February.
Yeah.
Um, and that's couples get together with us, and there's a lot of focus on movement there and practicing our movement together and releasing the soft tissues to let the baby through. So that's an element of that doesn't really get a lot of attention sometimes in some of the other hypnobirthing approaches that I've taught before, and so that's why that is so exciting to me, and I think you love it too, don't you? The fact that we've now combined the movement aspect with the hypnobirthing aspect, which is, you know, um,
Well, that's it. And I think, as we say, like, regardless of what birth you hope to have or what birth you end up choosing to have, um, move breath and movement, breath and movement, breath and movement, breath and movement. But get to know your body because your body tells a story, which can support or kind of hold you back a little bit from your birth. And you will hear, again, a conversation for another month, but women saying things like, oh, my pelvis is sore. Okay, well, where's your pelvis sore? Well, what do we think that could mean? How can we help? How can we move or rest? Or, you know,
Mhm.
we're not just sore because we're sore. We're not just sore because we're pregnant. Um,
Yeah.
it all tells a story, and actually just getting to know your breath, getting to know your movement. all of those things are really, really important as you start to work towards meeting your little baby. Uh,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, it's not a case of, oh, it'll just all go away when baby's born.
Mm-mm.
Actually quite naive to think like that. I used to believe it at times whenever my pelvis was sore. I was like, "Ugh, when baby comes," but I think that was just me choosing not to acknowledge it at the time.
And I think that's part of it, that sometimes this movement for birth is part of our program. And sometimes it gets understood as though that's for just a physiological birth or, like a vaginal birth, because that would be, yeah, I mean, I can understand why people might think that, but ultimately it's for your recovery. And even after a cesarean birth, having had the mobility, um, and a movement practice in your life of some sort will help you recover your bladder, your pelvic floor, all of that. So that all gets addressed in our course. And it's, I mean, I'm really passionate about it. And actually, I was just saying this morning, I was doing a wee yoga. I was teaching yoga this morning just before this. And I now really have to move every day. This
Yeah.
is it. It's non-negotiable. And by that, I don't just mean going for a walk. I actually have to have a mindful movement practice of sorts in the day. Because if I don't now, at this stage of my life, it just ceases. Like I noticed such a difference even to compared to 2 years ago or whatever. So I think just getting yourself into a habit of having a gentle movement practice doesn't mean that you have to do whatever 2 hours of high impact sports
Mm.
a day, but or bend yourself into a pretzel, but just to incorporate a mindful movement so that you can release your own pain if you need to. Uh, definitely is very
Well, and if I'm taking a week off to be with the kids, if they're off school or whatever, there's times just, with aches and pains that I have, I think to myself, I'm just going to give myself that kind of 3 or 4 days break from
important.
movement or break from yoga, and it never serves me well.
Mm,
But even over the weekend there, I was saying to you that I was loaded with the cold, and when I go out for a walk with the dogs, I tend to put a podcast in and listen to that. But over the weekend, I just thought, no, I need this to be like mindful walking, like just being totally focused on my breath and focused on, you know, rather than absorbing information that, then I'll want to look into even further. And so yeah, that kind of mindful movement is definitely so beneficial for everybody, but for
mhm,
women especially.
mhm. Definitely, and pregnancy is the best time to
Yeah.
start. Yeah.
Yep. Alrighty, so we'll catch up again next month and see what comes up in
Yeah,
yoga and reflexology, in massage, and in board through yoga.
absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Chat soon.
Chat soon. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
I don't know if I end just, oh no, no.